My favorite books is Understanding, well, it's not my favorite books, but it's a good book for instructional design, is Understanding by Design. And he kind of takes a backwards approach to learning. You kind of start with the end goal and kind of go backwards. And in there he tells a neat story about what, and it kind of relates with assessments, is they were working with some kids and teaching them, the food pyramid. Now it's the food plate, so they're going to have to redo it. But they're teaching them the food pyramid, and typically it would be, here's the food pyramid, and then they would have like a multiple choice quiz, or they'd have to click on the pyramid or something like that. And so that only really just tests their ability to repeat a fact, right? It really doesn't. You don't really know what their level of understanding is at that point. But then one of the things they did in applying their Understanding by Design approach is they actually had the kids develop a menu for, I think it was like a summer program or something. And so the menu, in their structuring of the menu, they were able to then demonstrate their understanding of the food pyramid and all this stuff that goes with the nutrition. So because you have an assessment or objectives doesn't mean it has to be kind of what we traditionally see in an e-learning course. So when I list it here, it's really just that you have a part of the course where you're identifying what they're going to learn, and a part of the course where you're assessing their level of understanding after you've intruded upon their lives with your course. And that really then becomes what a course is, at a real simple level. So if you want to make a check out to me for about $7,000, you save half that money, right? Okay, so that's the first thing, kind of just a basic understanding of building a course. Again, going to I'm just getting started. When you look at an e-learning course and you break it down by screens, right? I mean, it's a computer screen. There's really only so much stuff you can put on a screen. I have a lot of sneeze splatters for my kids and fingerprints and stuff, but outside of that, on your actual e-learning course, there's really only so many things you can do on a computer screen. So when you look at a course and you start to break them down, it's kind of like a book. A book's got a cover. They might have like a foreword in it. There's a table of contents. Might be an index. You've got chapters and all that stuff. So there's a structure. The books are all different, and they might be different sizes, different colors, and all of that stuff. But the structure is very similar, right? And it's the same thing with e-learning. So when you think of an e-learning course in a real simple sense, you've got a series of screens that you can develop. So using something like this is a good framework if you're just getting started to kind of think about, okay, I can come up with like a starter course in a sense that has like a welcome screen, because I'm going to have to say, hey, thanks for coming to this course. This is about safety or something, right? And then I've got to look, my eyes are bad, so I've got to look up here to see what the little blocks are. So you've got the instructions you might have, on how to use the course. You've got objectives. You've got your course, might be broken into sections or modules. And so within the sections and modules, you might have like a section intro, and then maybe a section objectives. So there's a lot of ways you can flesh that out. But when you look at an overall e-learning course, it's going to have a very similar structure. So you're always going to have a course that's going to have some sort of welcome screen, right? And most likely you have some sort of instructions, and you go through the process, and then you'll have some sort of summary and some sort of goodbye, see you later, have a great life, go back to work type of screen. And so you can, when you think about that, you can pre-build like a structure for your courses to help you get started. So when you're building your courses, think about that structure, and then just kind of, a lot of people will use Excel or just a simple form, let's build welcome screen, make sure what's our content screen going to look like, what's our summary screen going to look like. So there are a lot of things you can kind of pre-think through those things rather than just kind of react to each course as you're working on them. Then the other thing you can do is you can already begin to build some content templates. This is just a screen grab from PowerPoint, but when I kind of work with some of the templates that I do, I always think of, I've got like a welcome screen, so I'll build that template out. Again, there's only so much stuff you can do on a screen, so I might have text on the left, text on the right, text up, text down. I have a blank screen. I call it my media screen, so if I want as much real estate as possible on there. So I can kind of pre-build some structure like that. So I've got these templates built around that course structure we talked about earlier. And then it's a good starting point for me. And then if you work in a lot of organizations, you're kind of stuck with some of these branding issues. You can kind of already factor some of that into that. And it'll help you get if we look at that first slide we looked at where it was all jumbles and everything, this really helps you get moving in the right direction. And then the last part, when you're working with people, is typically, working with your customer, or your subject matter expert. Kind of what are some things that you can do to get your content right? And so, one of the things, I get a lot of questions about working with subject matter experts. I won't go into that. So we get a lot of questions about subject matter experts, and people are always trying to explain to them learning theory and all this mumbo jumbo, right? And they're just rolling their eyes and thinking, well, what's wrong with that rose I put on my screen, right? You're going to take that rose off. You better justify thinking that. I spent a lot of time. And when you really think about it, especially if you're working with content that was used in a classroom environment, and somebody's investing a lot of time building that, and they've been successful delivering the classes, and then all of a sudden you come in there and talk to them and go, I was reading Ruth Clark's book, and these I can't put that car on this slide there. They get upset because they've invested a lot of time in building their content. So trying to be sensitive, working with them is important. So what I like to do is just build treatments. So what I used to do, one of the places I worked at, is I actually had three. I had like an A, B, and C course. So I'd come in there and say, okay, here's the A-level course, and kind of show them what it looks like. Here's the A-level course. It's kind of basic. We can get this done in a couple of weeks, but it's pretty much a kind of a click and read information type course. Here's a B-level course. It's a little bit more, but we've got some interactivity and some different type of functionality to it. And then here's our C-level course, which is a little more interactive and custom built. We had, most of the places I worked at, we had some Flash developers. So we'd show them these different things so they can kind of see what they wanted. And then the other thing is you have treatments. I think the most important part is a treatment to show them how to take what would be kind of that boring content and make it better content for an e-learning course. Kathy Moore, does anybody read Kathy Moore's blog? So Kathy Moore, I think it's Kathy with a C-more.com. But she's got a couple of things that I think are pretty cool in there. One, she calls it action mapping. We used to call it like a bullseye approach to e-learning, but she has this process where she works with the content, kind of works backwards like the Understanding by Design book, and it's like, what do you want to do, and then what, how do you know that they've done this, and then build the content around that, and then kind of branch out that way. But the action mapping, she's got a couple of presentations on her website. That's really all you need to do is look at the presentations, you'll kind of get it. But you take the action mapping, and then she's got another one called Dump the Drone, where she talks about how to get out of the whole corporate-y training speak, right? That language that we have to sound really important, and kind of make it sound real down to earth. So she's got that it's called Dump the Drone. So you can do a search for the action mapping and Dump the Drone. Well, what I would recommend is if you want to get past that kind of compliance, PowerPoint-looking courses that a lot of you end up having to build, or kind of the static, linear type stuff. Take the action mapping, take the Dump the Drone, take your content, not that client's content because they'll be offended if you convert their stuff, but take some content that you have that might be typical of what you don't want to do in your organization, and then rework it, applying the action map concept to your content. So then you can go to your client or subject matter expert and give them a before and after example. Because everybody's had to take these courses that nobody likes them, right? It's like November 30th and you get an email saying you've got like 15 courses you've got to take for the end of the year, right? And it's like, oh, great. And you're just sitting there, clicking next, and trying to figure out. And then some brainiac instructional designer came up with some branching scenario, right? So now you can't even just click next. Now you actually have to pay attention because you can't figure out which branch you have to go through, right? So you can work with your client to get out of that type of content by coming up with treatments so you can show them some before and after examples. And then the same thing, build some templates to kind of have those starting point templates. So that's a good way to work with it. I kind of would factor into that as well. A lot of times you work in companies, they have all these branding requirements. And so, some communications person came up with some branding guidelines. There's like one logo and you get a document like 5 inches thick, explaining how to use the logo. And so I always think, nobody ever invited me over to the branding conversation. Communications never called me up and said, "Hey, Tom, we're going to start working on some branding guidelines. Why don't you come in and give us some input?" So my thought is, well, I build e-learning. I'm going to come up with the company's e-learning guidelines. And if somebody wants to build a course, I'll just say, this is how we build e-learning. Because the reality is most of those people won't challenge you anyway, because you'll just say, this is the way we build e-learning here at our company. And then you can come up with your own templates and structure that way. So you could take your company's branding, build it into the way you want to do it, so it works, for the company. But then you create the rules and then let them challenge that. But you probably 80% of the people will probably never challenge that. They'll just say, "Okay, well, if that's what you say, you're the e-learning person, right?" And then the next part is come up with some practical tips when you're working with subject matter experts. So one is some of the stuff I was talking about. The other is just helping them with their content, right? You got to go through the content with them and explain where it works and where it doesn't work. And then the other thing is some kind of basic things, right? So you could create a checklist off of this stuff. There's certain types of content that you need to get from them, the notes they have, the media, pictures, all that stuff, reference material, quiz questions, anything that they need to get. You can come up with like a checklist of things that you need to get from them. That's going to help them support you better, and you work with them when you're building the courses. Two other things that have worked really well for me, because I found in places where I've had to work with subject matter experts, is e-learning is really not important to them, and so they're not going to give me all the time I need. And a lot of times they weren't really great people to work with. So what I did is, one is you go get the Starbucks card for like $15, and you send it to them and tell them how great it is working with them, right? Because you give them one Starbucks card, and that $15 is a great investment. Or you can do like Dr. Werner says, just go to Starbucks and pick up some blank cards and just hand them out. They'll go to Starbucks, but nobody will ever come back to you and say, "Hey, that card didn't have any money on it." And it's a lot cheaper than actually spending money. And or the other thing you could do is just send their boss like a nice email and talk about how great it is working with them and how supportive they are, and all that type of stuff, and do it in a genuine way, and then CC them on it, because everybody likes that recognition, and then it's going to be easier working with them. But if you can help them get prepared, you can help them see how to rework their content, it's going to be a step in the right direction. So that's kind of the first stage in the process. You're not going to necessarily build the world's best e-learning courses. Brandon Hall's not going to put you up there, and which is good, because you don't have to then pay the $500 to have them give you that award. So the second step in the process, okay, how do I get my course to look better, right? And so it's kind of two things. One, I was at a conference and somebody was saying, all this looking good stuff is just eye candy. It's just, you're just making the courses glossy, so the courses are still bad. It's like, hey, I'd rather like a good-looking bad course than a bad-looking bad course. And in a lot of ways, I kind of see it at that part of the aesthetic. It's like staging. You're selling a house, and you hire those. My wife likes to watch those house shows. That's the only reason why I know this stuff. But they hire those people to come in and take all your junky furniture out, and they rent furniture and bring the nice furniture in, right? And they stage the house. It's the same house, but they know how to put stuff in there to make the house look different. In a lot of ways, that's what you're doing, and part of the making your course look right for e-learning is it's like you're staging. It's like you've got objects on the screen. You've got to learn how to place those objects on the screen so that they work with the course and not conflict with what you're doing in the course. And then the other part is a lot of what you're doing when you're building e-learning courses and the look and feel of it. It's about creating a look for your course that complements your content. So you create an immersive experience when the learner's going through that. So we'll look at a couple things. So the main thing is that visual design that you do. It's about crafting meaning with your course. And I'll give you a couple of examples. This actually in itself, the slide's an example, because by default, most people, because they're on the computer,